We are live. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good day. This is Ian Nethercott with the famous Auto Hub show, and today we're doing the Fixed Op show. That's because it's Friday, and on Fridays we do the Fixed Op show, but more importantly, today we're going to talk a little bit about fixed ops, but more importantly, the parts side of the business that I know we don't talk about enough in automotive. We don't talk enough about service. We definitely don't talk enough about parts. So here we go. I'm going to start with a quick video. This video is coming from a show I did on tires. So let's start with that. Here we go. Hey. So that's a little bit about from the tire show. If you are interested in how to sell more tires in the service drive, I know we're talking about parts today. What you want to do is check out that show. It's called "It's All About Tires," and I got a typo there. I got to fix. Anyway, let's get into it. Here we go. And we have Kaylee on. We're most likely going to get one or two other people that are a little late because it is Friday evening. Here we go. And that's the whole intro for the Auto Hub show, for the Fixed Op show. And the reason is it is a new show this year. We have a number of episodes. It is live every Friday. And today we're talking a little bit about tires. We do have Kaylee on from Parts Edge. She's not on audio or video yet, so hopefully that'll happen soon. But before we get into that, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Fixed Op show, but more importantly, the topic for today, which is parts. So I've had the option to work in dealerships on the fixed op side when I worked for a company called Dealer FX. So we did a number of things on the parts side of the business, and I have had exposure to some pretty sophisticated parts side systems, whether that be Revolution parts or automated parts distribution systems, or even old school parts departments. But when I talk about parts, specifically on the service side of the house, what I hear a lot is really on the parts phone side. So when you look at parts as a department, but more importantly, a department where phone calls come in. Most parts departments deal with internal customers, which would be the techs on the parts side of the business. But they're also dealing with external customers, be that other shops, possibly third-party vendors or third-party shops that are fixing vehicles or those type of things. And in a lot of cases, there's almost a cliche in the parts department, which is parts can you hold? And part of the challenge there is parts people dealing with different masters. So be that people in front of them in the parts department, people internally are buying parts for cars, or third-party people that are buying those parts to fix cars from a third-party shop. There's a lot going on there. So when I dealt with the parts side, and I hear that parts can you hold, and I hear that kind of stuff going on, it was really always about, in my opinion, that maybe a lack of focus, a lack of staffing, or in some cases, a lack of computer equipment. I was working with this Nissan dealer in the Los Angeles area a number of years ago, and they had 3 partsmen that were dealing with these different types of customers. But more importantly, they had 3 computers, one of which of those computers was not operational. So what would happen is they'd have the staffing to handle the phone calls, but they wouldn't have the computers available to actually handle that search to quote out parts or those type of things. And part of the challenge in that store wasn't just the lack of computers; it was a lack of caring from the management of the dealership group and the IT side to focus on the fact that you really needed to make sure that all 3 people were not only trained, but they could operate at a high level. Just like in a BDC department or where you're running parts from the parts department to the techs in the bays, or even from a delivery point of view, delivering those to different places that buy parts, you need to be sure that you have the staff available. And more importantly, you have a process that you're looking at and improving every single day. When you're looking at parts department revenue, and you're looking at revenue from dated parts or custom order parts or parts in inventory, we also talked about tires on the pre-show a little bit from a show about tires. You also need to look at aged parts and maybe parts that didn't really get picked up by customers. They're in inventory, they're costing you money. And the example I always use in this case is an Audi dealership that I had the opportunity to work for. They had a multi-million-dollar machine that not only distributed parts, but also made sure when it was pulling apart for a partsman to fix a vehicle or for someone to send out to another dealership, whether they be a new dealership or someone fixing cars of that brand, the system was smart enough to know the inventory, to know the oldest part in inventory, and to distribute that part. So really a lot of that heavy lifting of finding the part or ordering the part or pricing the part, all that was really automated. Now that may not be a solution that every dealership can do, or more importantly, every dealership can handle or afford. But the first thing I think you need to do as a parts department, especially these days, is really look at the what's the best source of parts for the store, but more importantly, how you can streamline and sell parts, and make sure you're making money. So Kaylee did join. I'm not sure why she's not on video or audio yet, but maybe she can introduce herself and talk a little bit about her philosophy on the parts hold process, and more importantly, on overall dealership revenue, because Parts Edge really is a company that works with dealers on the parts side of the business. And I'm sure she has in-depth knowledge of what's going on in parts today, being that she works in this area all the time. Kayla, are you there?
Yes, I am here. Sorry, I was picking up children at the bus.
Not a problem. So tell me more. First of all, introduce yourself and tell me more about your thoughts on the parts squeeze hold process at most dealers, which is almost becoming a running joke over time, but also how you benefit dealers. Like what do you do and what that's about? Yeah, go ahead.
That's a lot of questions there. So I guess parts hold process.
Yeah.
I don't even know really why parts is answering. Like, why are the calls going to parts?
Yeah, fair enough.
It should be. I feel like it should be going to like a dedicated team,
right?
Because parts really never really has time. So if you want a better experience, create a better process. Is my whole thing. I call dealerships all the time. That's what I get, parts hold, and I'm waiting, and you don't even know what I want. They don't know if I'm a vendor or a customer. So, but to answer your other question on just how we benefit dealerships, we're working very closely with parts managers to support their day-to-day. We look at the DMS and optimizing it so that they can stock smarter and be more profitable in their parts departments.
Yeah, so Parts Edge, you work with all sizes of dealers, all types of dealers. Like, what's your sweet spot? Like, what do you look for there in a partner?
I look for innovative parts managers that are looking to be more efficient. It doesn't really matter the manufacturer. I feel like our business is we have more, I feel like more GM and Chrysler dealers, because those tend, you have to jump through a little bit more hoops when it comes to just the auto stock replenishment programs and staying compliant, and there's just a lot more layers to it. Sorry, getting a call.
No worries.
So yeah, I think parts is parts, but yeah, I feel like most of our clients are like GM, Chrysler. We're putting more focus on Toyota dealerships because we're able to really impact them. So yeah.
So what's your opinion? I mean, I know that there's a lot of, fear on parts pricing, but more importantly, vehicle pricing. I'm a dealership. I have a bunch of parts. Some of them are special order parts. Some of them are long stock parts. Some of them are parts I don't even necessarily know if I need or not. What do you recommend they look at as they're looking at that parts inventory and going, okay, the price of parts may go up. I'm assuming it will. What do I do with the parts that I have in stock that maybe I'm not managing properly? Like, what do you think on that? What's your thought?
It's funny because I actually just interviewed one of the founders of PartsEdge on just what's going on, tariffs and all of that stuff. So we literally just had this conversation.
Okay.
And what I've gathered just from talking with dealerships and their perspective, it's like the pricing and just reviewing and appreciation and making those reviews and increases and adjustments where you need to, because even without all of everything that's going on, most of the times dealerships don't really look at their parts pricing and make adjustments on a regular basis. A lot of times the matrix or things were set up years ago by someone that might not be there anymore. Same with the sources. So I think that's where people need to look at is how their sources are set up, if they have a matrix in place, where adjustments need to be, and appreciation needs to happen. And I think making those incremental increases, then you won't lose your profit and you will keep up.
Yeah, I mean, because when you look at pricing, even without what's going on right now, annually, even with regular inflation, your pricing of parts should be going up over time anyway, like everything else, I would guess. Am I correct there? Like whether it's a bolt or whether it's a transmission or whatever. But what always surprised me when I worked with a lot of parts departments, and I haven't done that in a while, so I'm probably a little rusty, was just the amount of special order parts that they had in inventory that maybe nobody had called anybody. And you made me looking at parts that have been there for quite a while. But when I look at the tariff, and I've done a number of shows on tariffs, one of the examples from, I'm not sure what news channel it was, it might have been Wall Street Journal, but a guy had a long exploded view on a table of a transmission. So it was like all the parts in a transmission of a car. And he was like, well, how do you tariff this? And it was interesting because it was strictly like an exploded view on a table. So there were like, I don't know, 5,000 parts there. So I was looking at it from a parts department point of view, and I said, okay, if I'm going in and I'm trying to fix my parts department or optimize it, how often does a normal parts department even do an inventory of parts? Like, how often does that happen? Is it annually?
For the most part, I feel like annually. There are some dealerships that do it more often throughout the year, like maybe even quarterly. But I think most importantly is having a solid reconciliation process. And I think if you can keep up on that, then doing those yearly physicals, then it won't be so much of a surprise or hard. So getting good process on those reconciliations, I think, is more important.
So for a general manager or sales manager that may be listening, what does that mean on the parts side?
What, reconciling?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of reports to pull, but it's basically so accounting can keep catch up to parts. So just balancing everything out to make sure you're not, when you do that physical inventory that yearly, you're not finding a needle in the haystack. What is it? You're finding it's a little bit easier to find the needle in the haystack, I guess.
So it's a little bit different than a car's missing that no one paid for kind of thing. It's a little bit more granular. I remember working at a store years ago, and they did an annual reconcile of inventory for used cars, for example. And they couldn't find this car and didn't know what happened to it, and it's no longer there, but no one paid for it. So they're like, yeah, it's kind of a problem. But I was thinking about it from your average dealer that might have thousands of parts. Obviously, this is something that really they can optimize, but more importantly, probably make those adjustments more often depending on inventory. So I think there's definitely some options there. What are the best practices for, like, forward-thinking parts managers and service managers? Like, what are they doing that sets them apart, in your opinion?
Well, I just think about, I feel like when you're constantly looking ahead and trying to fine tune your process and be more efficient, that's where you're not just surviving in your business, you're actually working on the business. That's when I see like the better top performing leaders. They're just you can't keep up with them because they're not actually surviving in the day to day and they have time.
Right.
Yeah. Can you hear me? Sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, hey, you can't keep up to them. It reminds me of the interview I did with Brian Benstock a couple of years ago where he said, yeah, I work 8 days a week now. I work 7 days a week. I work 6 to catch up to everyone else and 7 to get ahead. And I was kind of laughing about that when you said that. Because I was thinking about that Nissan store I was talking about in LA where they had 3 partsmen, but one computer didn't work. So one partsman was always waiting for a computer to do his job. And I talked to their IT guy and I'm like, replace computer. He's like, well, it sometimes works. I'm like, no, replace computer. So it's kind of funny. Yeah. So do you think that's a staffing issue? It's a leadership issue? Like, what are you seeing where people really get it? Like, what are they doing differently? Like, what makes that animal different than the normal or the average, in your opinion?
I think it's leadership. I think when you're working as a team and culture, that's when you look at the dealerships that are just so successful, and it's leadership and they have culture and they are not just surviving in the day. They're actually having conversations and making adjustments to process because business changes and you have to take a step back sometimes. I mean, I do it in my own process, in my own day. Like sometimes I have to take a step back and really look at some of these processes to make adjustments so that I have more time to do more important things.
Yeah, I've been reading,
and it's the same for everyone.
Yeah, I've been reading a book recently or listening to it, Good to Great. It's an old book, but they talk about the hedgehog concept. And it's kind of interesting just because it talks about the fox versus the hedgehog and the fact that the hedgehog is just way smarter and way more defended than the fox. The fox is always trying to get an advantage, but can't seem to get it handled, which I thought was interesting. And as I've looked and worked at different service departments of various sizes, anything from small Mitsubishi stores to large Toyota and Audi and Chrysler stores, one that even had a night shift. So they were fixing diesel trucks at night, which was kind of interesting. And I have seen some stuff with robots delivering parts, which I think is kind of interesting as well.
That is. Yeah.
But when you're looking at sort of that parts edge client and you're saying, hey, this is where you are now, and then you're looking back 6 months after they work with you, like what's the upside for them? Like what have you seen as the repercussion of fixing these things?
That's a great question. I think the biggest thing when I'm interviewing on just like progress and what we've done for them, I just always hear them say they have more time. And sometimes it doesn't, like when you think about time, it doesn't seem that important to, like when you're like a GM thinking like, oh cool, my parts manager has more time. But it allows them more time to be more creative with the way that they're looking at that investment, because in reality they're an asset manager and they're not just so it's like the time is very valuable to a parts manager, and giving them more visibility on the data so that they can make better decisions, and then just automating some of the things that should just be automated in the DMS. A lot of times I think when we set up a DMS and a system, some of the parts managers forget that parts edge is in the background doing a lot of it, and they think the DMS is doing it, and it should, but it doesn't do it without us. So, there's a lot of layers to it. But that's a good question.
I always use the example of Harley Davidson because they're so good at selling accessories and stuff. But I also use the example, I think it's Beaverton Toyota that I had the opportunity to work with, and they have a retail store that's like, I guess like maybe a BMW store would have, or maybe not as big as Harley, but it was almost like a clothing and accessory store within the store, because they have about 500 ROs a day on average that come in. They have a restaurant as well. But what was interesting is when you look at that Harley model and you look at what they were doing, which is a smaller version of that model, they were looking at every square foot of that, call it service waiting area, was being utilized with some form of revenue. So whether it be the tote, a shirt or hat or whatever, or whether it be the sandwich or coffee, everything was thought through. But from a strictly parts point of view, I think people forget, to your point, some stores may have millions of dollars of inventory that's really an asset. It's really sitting there. And it brings back something I was watching, I think earlier in the week. They were talking about grocery stores, and they said, that's not inventory, that's money sitting there. So the question is, what are you doing on that, right?
Yeah, well, that's a good point of bringing up grocery stores, because I know a lot of times when we do webinars and we're talking about inventory and the way we organize the parts, it's the same thing as a grocery store. And when you think about it, the average dealerships has maybe like 5 sources of where they categorize the parts. It's the same thing for a grocery store. You can't put your milk and your canned asparagus in the same source, because they have different day supply, they have different phase-in criteria. There's so many different variables, and so that's kind of when you put it in perspective like that, but times like 100,000, because there's like so many different parts.
Oh yeah,
that's kind of what we're doing.
I have a buddy I did my MBA with, and he ran a coffee company, and now he's running a chocolate company. And I was watching something last night on the ice cream business, and on the margin in ice cream, even though you can scale it infinitely, the problem is customers. It's not about the scaling of ice cream manufacturer, it's the customer side. And I think the same thing is true when you look at your average car dealer. They probably have a finite amount of ROs coming in, but parts is more than that. Parts also sells internal and external customers. Most stores have a parts delivery service of some type. They have a tire inventory. They probably have some optimization in terms of older inventory, or maybe accessories or parts to that thing. When I sold websites, what always shocked me was that a lot of service departments didn't have a parts special of some type. And one of the biggest successes I had when I worked for Nissan, which was kind of funny, strictly from a parts point of view, is when you go to most parts departments, they have the news on. Not that the news is good or bad. And what this dealer did is they just put TVs in that played parts specials. So they went to the manufacturer, said, okay, we want to sell this in the winter. We want to sell this in the summer. So they just had this basically screen that played, never-ending loops of parts specials. And the reason I brought up Harley was the average Harley store, 40% of their profit comes from Harley stuff. So if you really did it well on a non-Harley store, I think you could get some very good revenue from that.
Absolutely.
But more importantly, you could have turns, right? Like grocery, right? I would assume.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Harley has created a brand. People wear Harley without owning Harleys. So it's like they make more money off of their accessories and their brand than they do off of their motorcycles and selling them.
Yeah, I was talking to a dealer friend of mine who owns a couple stores, and he said not only do they have T-shirts at scale, the T-shirts are perishable. So the T-shirts, they order a couple times a year. I think they're seasonal. And they don't reprint those shirts. So they own them for a period of time. And you get people that are so nuts that they'll go to different Harley stores in different states or in Canada, different provinces, and they'll buy shirts from different stores because they're actually different even in that market. So I thought that was really interesting. So when you're looking at savings, because we all know everyone's looking to save some money on inventory, they're looking to turn more profit, they're looking to turn more parts inventory so that they're not stocking it and storing it and financing it. Once you have a better sense of what's on the shelf, to use grocery as an example, and you know where things should be stored and what you got, what's your advice on how they can turn those parts better and maybe grow their business where they're selling to third parties as well? Because it's not just the internal customer, or the internal customer walks up, wants an accessory. It's those third parties that are buying parts as well, right?
Yeah, I think as a business, you have to decide what business you want to be in, because I mean, if you want to be in wholesale and you want to be on online sales, that's a department in each individual department in itself. So you have to decide if that's what those businesses you want to go into. and make that decision. But then also when it comes to your drive, because I think everyone can agree or knows that that's where you make more money. And so I think that being more efficient with what you're stocking, having more of the right parts will just translate into service and making technicians more efficient because you have more of the right parts. So it takes working together as a team, parts, service, tech, everyone just not working against each other. Parts really work. I mean, yeah, there's robots to deliver parts, but also if you don't have that availability to you, being a team and having some parts runners, or, if you're a one person operation, preparing so that you can help when you can and making it as efficient as possible.
Yeah,
I don't know if I answered your question.
It's all great advice.
It was a big question.
Yeah. Well, we were talking a little bit about extra time. There's a book, SaaS buddy of mine. He has a book called Buy Back Your Time. 80% done for you is better than 100% done by yourself. But when you're looking at let's say a service manager is able to save time and they're then able to put that into a project, do you think that it's not just the service manager's time? It's the fact that maybe they don't have the staff to execute. Do you think that's a concern too in the parts department itself? Like one person, five people, whatever that number is.
Yeah, I think, because I'm always backing parts, and I am more, I know we're trying to talk, like, service and parts is one, but I obviously talk to more parts people than I do service.
Understood.
And I do feel like parts gets left behind and has a high expectation of, like, what they are capable of doing, and they're always short-staffed. I think they could probably use an extra body back. But service tends to get that extra body than parts does.
So if you're putting your dealer's hat on, you're saying, listen, today I had PhD and my dad gave me a dealership, or my mother, or whatever. And you had to look at those different departments, being at parts, obviously that's where your focus is. What do you think is needed to make that, from a staffing point of view, what do you think is needed to make that work better? Like, how would you analyze that? Like, you're going into the parts department, you're going, great, I got this parts department, I want it to perform better, I got inventory, I got a manager, or whatever. How do you evaluate as a dealer what you should do there? Like, from a staffing point of view, like, how do you do that?
I think that's a good question. I think that you have to review the process first, making sure that every part of each department has a solid flow and process. And if because I think you may think that you need more people, but the process may be broken and you probably don't need an extra person because it's broken. So I think that would probably be the first thing, working with the team and really seeing where things get improved to save time, or just make things more streamlined. Then you look at, okay, let's add some people. But I don't think you can just go in and look at numbers and say, we do this many sales, we need this many people. That's a good, like, baseline, but then also actually working with the team and seeing where a process can be, because process is everything. I mean, we talk about it all the time in our business. And I actually was just talking about this with my team, because back when I ran a Subway restaurant, that was one thing that we were so dialed into, because I had a great owner who really had a good process. But then once she kind of handed it off and we had this new location, it was fine-tuning that process based on that location, because what was working at the location down the street wasn't necessarily working here.
Right.
So I had to look at, okay, where do we need to move people? Where do we need to have a better list so that we can, all just know what the heck we're doing, and just basically for Subway, it's like you're just trying to get sandwiches as fast as you can.
Hopefully.
It's the same thing with cars. I mean, you're trying to get the cars out.
So based on the parts department alone, we've obviously got a couple of things that you want to look at as a dealer who's listening. Number one, you want to look at what's your staffing level? What are they actually doing? So to use McDonald's or Subway or your favorite burger place, Five Guys as an example, they have a process and not by accident. So you want to look at, what's your inventory level, audit that inventory, figure out, can you do things better from an optimization point of view to maybe have more time to stretch that staff or better utilize that staff? Are you dropping things because you're doing too much when maybe you should focus on your core competencies? And more importantly, are you maximizing the money internally in the drive and in, dealing with inbound calls? Because we all know the parts can you hold is not acceptable. So that may be, a BDC or a frontline service team handling that call, because clearly the parts person not good at doing that.
I don't think parts should be answering the phone unless it's like a solid process that's been trained, and this is how we handle these incoming calls. But I don't think there's even really a process for it. So I just don't. They're too busy in that they shouldn't be answering, I think.
So even if they could, they shouldn't be, because they don't know how to answer the call. It's kind of like a new salesman answering a sales call. Like, not really a good idea. I agree. And then obviously not looking at it as the back room or the storeroom where people sort of go to get stuff. More like a parts counter. There's a Chrysler store near me that has a pretty good parts counter, and like a little store where they sell, I don't know, Dodge stuff or whatever they're selling. But, and I think that's another thing. Like, once you got the core competencies down, there is an opportunity to utilize square footage to maybe have some turns in inventory and make some money there. And then we did talk a little bit about increasing pricing because of tariffs, but more importantly, building in increases using software. So that way you're not going, haven't changed the price of that in 5 years. So it's a little bit of a problem. But when you're looking at, say, the future, obviously we're going to see AI more. We talk about it every single day. We're seeing software for optimization. Do you see that? Do you hear more about the manufacturers going, hey, if we had more data from the parts side, that would make it more efficient for the dealer? Do you hear anything on that side at all?
I mean, I think that I'm not really hearing a lot of that, but I do think that the data is everything, and we have to really figure out how to organize it and make it so that we can make better decisions on it. So I know that we are testing out a lot of AI in the background. We haven't fully implemented anything at all, but it has been said when I have newer parts managers that are onboarding, that they say it feels like AI, because it's just automatically just knowing where things are supposed to go. So in a way, we've written a code or process that is operating in the AI way, but I don't want to call it AI because it's not.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Because just in case you didn't know, most AI is predictive analytics, and there's multiple stages. We've had a number of guests on in the last, I'd say 18 months to 24 months talk about that. And we're actually at a month-end show next Monday. We're going to have one of our favorite experts, probably two of them, talking about data, because data is a big thing. But at the end of the day, I think the big challenge for dealers is they buy too many shiny bongos and they think it's going to magically solve all the problems in the universe. And I'm sure that's true in parts. But let's just say someone wants to get together with Parts Edge. Obviously, there will be information in the details below. What's the process? Like, how does that work for them? If they say, hey, I want to fix parts, like, how do I do that? Kaylee, what, I don't know what I'm doing. I know they drink coffee back there and there's some parts. I never go there because I'm in the front because I own the store. Like, how does that work?
Yeah. I would say just having a conversation. I feel like I talk to a lot of dealers because they're like, I need to pay more attention to my parts department, but I don't really know where to start. So
don't want to know where it is.
Yeah. We have a consultation of I'm asking them questions about their parts department, what are their focuses, what are their concerns, and then we just kind of walk through what it would look like to work together if there's an opportunity. So I feel like my first thing is I'm not constantly just Parts Edge is the solution. No, it's meeting to figure out if it's the right solution for your dealership. So that's where it starts, I think, just having those consultations. And then once it's okay, this is a great solution or this is a solution for me, then it's a matter of just, going through the onboarding process. And there's a lot of, there's process, there's steps to it.
Shocking.
And
Shocking. There's a process.
We have to review how everything's set up. We propose, the changes. We work very closely with the team, make sure that they understand what's happening and what we're going to accomplish. And then, nothing happens overnight, especially if it's an unhealthy inventory. The very unhealthy ones I've seen turn around in like 6 months.
Wow.
But I would say there's the dealerships that are healthy and they work with us too. So.
Yeah, so obviously process, shocking, is important. Setup and maybe a conversation on whether there's a fit or it even makes sense. Obviously working with a dealer who wants to fix the problem or a manager who wants to fix the problem versus just accepting it. It wouldn't be shocking to me if a dealer didn't know where parts was, but it is what it is. When you're looking at sort of the, the future of parts or the future of service, and how that's changed over the last 5 years. Where do you see that going? Like, what's your thought?
Oh gosh. Well, personally, I think that there should be more focus on mobile service. I think that's where it's going. Because if you look at how we get our groceries and how we get things, it's just so seamless, and we don't have to take a whole day off to get groceries or, fix our car. Yeah. So I feel like mobile service is probably where we need to really focus and making it just meeting because it might not be the solution where you're located too. I think that's important. It depends on location. So really figuring out what your customer base, what they want, and then meeting them where they want to be and stop forcing, the way it's always been done. I agree. Kind of looking around of like what other industries are doing because.
I worked with Mercedes-Benz 15 years ago, unified call center for a bunch of locations in a big metro market. At that point, they were doing mobile service for some services with their, I think it was the Sprinter van. Anyway, the Mercedes van at the time, whatever that was. And the thing that was interesting to me is I also worked with an Audi location that was swapping cars. Like they were physically switching cars across an urban market, which also was an interesting model. But when you look at how people are focused around these devices, pick your device, and how based on age demographics, how the patience level is decreasing, going into a dealership without having an understanding of how long it's going to take or when it's going to be ready or do you have the parts, that's a challenge. I've had the opportunity to interview the people from UVI, which is kind of the latest and greatest kind of, looks like something out of a sci-fi movie piece of tech for service drives. That's interesting, but if you don't have the parts to fix the car, that's great. When am I coming back to get that done? So I think part of it is just all these moving parts, whether it be online booking or mobile service or the connection between the service department. It all needs to be seamless, right? Much like your Subway example. I can't make a sandwich if I don't have the ingredients. And I think that's part of how simple parts is, but also how complex these moving parts are. Whether it be making a car or fixing a car or a recall part or coordinating the appointment to the part to the tech and making sure that all happens seamlessly. And I think the next 5 years, that's going to get more interesting, surely because I think ownership term of cars is going to continue to extend because of cost of vehicles today. And I think that means that dealers who are listening should say, hey, I got to get better at service. But in order to do that, I got to get better at coordinating these departments and my parts inventory. But more importantly, I got to get better at making money on square footage of a physical location where maybe I'm not selling as many cars as I was 3 years ago. And I think that's what part of the reason I'm doing the Fix Stop Show now is I saw that a while ago and I'm going, yeah, you probably should fix that problem and get that running versus running on one cylinder. So in sensitiveness to time, since we only have one great guest today, we were going to have more. Larry was going to be on a couple other people, but that happens on Fridays. What final thoughts do you have? Like what thoughts do you have for the dealer who says, hey, I don't know what I don't know. This is complicated. It's process driven. I'm not good at that. how do I get started, and like how much of it do I have to do, or is that something you can do for me? Like what's the heavy lifting side of this?
Well, that's the whole beauty of Parts Edge is it's not, yeah, we're consulting, giving advice, but it's not like, here's all your information and go try to implement it. Like we've written that process to implement it for them and then maintain it. So I think that's the heavy lifting part. I think if you are listening and you want to know more about parts and you're just, where do you start? I really put a lot of focus on creating content around parts. And so we have monthly webinars, we have a podcast, we have a blog. We're constantly putting out information of like things to think about for your parts department. So I would start at our website, partsedge.com, and just kind of feel around and see what you can learn. If you want to talk to me, you can reach out. I'm a normal.
If you have a parts question, we can help, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's why I focused on it, because I'm like, if you have a parts question, just reach out. I'm not trying to force parts session. I'm just trying to help. So.
All right. Well, thanks for taking the time today. I really appreciate it. If you do have a question around parts, and I know it's the department, in some cases it's in the back corner, there are people back there and they are generating revenue for your dealership, and they are dealing with customers, both internal and external. And there is an opportunity to optimize that department, make more money, but more importantly, get ahead of probably changes in parts cost. As we look at an increase in labor rate, parts cost, longevity in vehicles, because I think the average is now 13 years of ownership term for cars, which is a little bit nuts. I think you will see more people not only need parts to fix their existing car or upgrade it because they're keeping it longer, but also making sure you have those parts so the process, like the sandwich shop, works seamlessly, so we don't have customers coming back and giving us bad ratings, is important. And how often, Kaylee, do you do your podcast, and where can people find out about it?
Okay, so we're doing two different things here. We're doing webinars, which are monthly.
Okay.
So that's more of a presentation, kind of not lecture, but like, we're going through a presentation, taking questions live. And then the podcast, we're going through some rebranding. Okay. So I have the Parts Girl podcast, and I decided I wanted to have two, which that was a complete mess. So I bringing it all back under one, and it's just simply going to be the Parts Edge podcast. So you'll see more of that here in the next month, where we're going to have a parts series. We'll have trailblazers in the industry, and some successes, like real clients that are using Parts Edge and what they're doing. So that's all on our website. But I am working on rebranding that as we speak.
And did you want to share a success story that's memorable for you in your experience with Parts Edge? Do you have any example you want to share? Not to put you on the spot.
Yeah, gosh. I have a whole list that I'm formulating, and which one did I just recently? This was a parts manager who went through a DMS change and took over for a 30-year person who was there for 30 years. Wow. And so we just started working with him, and he is sharp. He had been there 2 years already, so he's not complete. And I think he had a lot of parts background, so it's not like he's completely brand new. But just hearing his feedback was really cool, because he was like, I wish I would have signed up sooner. And when you start working with someone and having that support, you don't realize how much visibility you can get. We were able to really reduce the inventory, I think, by 40,000, and wow. Not just in obsolescence, but in just stuff that doesn't move faster, and shifting into more sales. So yeah, I guess that's one that I'm just working on.
Working on. And what's the average parts inventory? What would an average dealer have in inventory? Do you have a guess there, or rough data?
Well, I think it depends on the manufacturer, but I feel like average is 350 to 500,000. But I'd say we work with a range. I think the smallest inventory maybe 100,000. and the largest being 20 million. So we have all the ranges.
So obviously, the reason I asked that question is if I'm looking at a number of 40,000, I don't know the reference point, so I was just trying to put two and two together there. But
no, it's a good thing. Yeah, I think his inventory was about 350, 400. So reduction was that almost 10% reduction.
Yeah,
I don't know. Did I do the math right?
Well, I just don't know. So I mean, if you have parts questions, you can definitely reach out below. There'll be some details from Kaylee from Parts Girl, and obviously the podcast is being redone for the new and improved website and company. But if you're looking for parts information, she's my go-to person. I know enough to be dangerous on the parts side of the business, hence why I wanted to have her on. But have yourself a great Friday. And if it's a parts question or you want to get better at process and results in the parts department, obviously Parts Edge is a great place to start. And have yourself a great day.
Thank you.
Just one second.